we will now begin the seminar, and I would like to call to the stage Mr. Hans Poulis for the introductory remarks. Mr. Hans Poulis is the chairman of the Federation of Hong Kong Business Associations Worldwide.
Minister Peng, Ambassador Zhao Bentang, Francis Ho, Eddie, Stephen, Silas, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored and happy to welcome you at the Hong Kong Seminar 2022 in Lisbon. Thank you, Portugal-Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for hosting this event, and a special thanks to you, Bernardo. After 2.5 years of COVID restrictions, we are extremely happy we can have this physical get-together. Although we are experienced in the new normal of virtual meetings, I still believe that we as human beings need to see each other in person. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID disrupted the world in many ways. We all know this. Impacts are historical and not foreseen simply because we never experienced such a global healthcare situation. We are still trying to find our way to the new normal. The world is facing different strategies to manage the COVID situation as of today, with the example that China and Hong Kong are still having limitations to travel and lockdowns. For obvious reasons, the world has big challenges in the supply chain, production, and shortage of materials. Inflation is extremely high, from which we can expect negative impact on economies and potential recessions at short and mid-long term. These facts are something we have to realize, but most of all try to manage. An interesting fact to realize the opportunities of doing business between European countries with Hong Kong and China. Let's sincerely hope Hong Kong and China will be open again soon, while the businesses need each other and we need to move forward as economies. The signals are positive for the second half this year, so really let's hope so. When we go back in history, I realized from here, as early as the 15th century, Portuguese ships sailed to the far corners of Earth looking for new products and new suppliers. One of the things they discovered in China was the city of Macau in the Pearl River Delta. This town was founded by the Portuguese in the 1550s. Macau remained Portuguese until 1999. It's a long history of almost 450 years back in history. How great to be in Portugal today and see the great relationship between Portugal and Hong Kong, China. There are more reasons to pay attention to the long-term relationship between European countries and especially the supportive associations. In 1982, the Austrian Hong Kong Society was founded. Getty, congratulations to the 40th anniversary of your society. In 1997, the Association France Hong Kong was founded. Richard, congratulations with the 25th anniversary of your association. And last but not least, Brendan, I congratulate you on the 20th anniversary of the Ireland Hong Kong Business Forum, which was founded in 2002. I'm sure we can find an opportunity to raise our glasses during this forum. Dear friends, this year also marks the 25th anniversary of the establishment of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China. I remember that the run-up to 1997, many feared the old Hong Kong would disappear quickly after the so-called handover, and that the city would become just one of the many Chinese cities. But to the surprise of many, the Hong Kong under Chinese rule did not disappear. For years and years, it continued to prosper. It weathered financial crisis, economic downturns, and the SARS epidemic. Business people from Europe continued to visit Hong Kong to sell and source and do the trades. But slowly over time, the city did change, and the last couple of years has been challenging. Hong Kong today is different from the Hong Kong of 10 or even 5 years ago. Seminars, trade fairs, receptions, all of these important aspects of doing business were postponed, cancelled, or changed into web-based events. For a city like Hong Kong, a traditional marketplace for traders around the world, these developments were painful indeed. Instead of bustling exhibition centers with thousands of buyers and exhibitors, TDC staff members could only watch their computer screens and try to think of new ways to match producers to buyers. So what's next and what to expect? And I'd like to make a statement here and today. Don't give up on Hong Kong. Hong Kong has proven time after time that it can bounce back from being hurt, that its people can always discover new ways to make the city a good place for business. Challenges will become opportunities. Yes, things have changed, and we, the onlookers, may not always agree with these developments. But the fact remains that the location of Hong Kong and a number of still very attractive advantages will make it possible that as soon as the circumstances allow this, the city can revive itself. Trade fairs will reopen, and European buyers, always in need of good products, will revisit these. The online trade fairs will hopefully become a memory soon. Hong Kong will remain an interesting and high-ranking financial center in the world and for the Asia region. The interesting position for Hong Kong in the Greater Bay Area with over the 80 million people will provide opportunities for European businesses to play a role. And with the speakers of today, ladies and gentlemen, pretty sure you will get some insight about Hong Kong for today and for tomorrow. And I'd like to wish you a pleasant seminar today and hope you will enjoy. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Hans. And for the welcome speech, I would like to call Mr. Cheung, Special Representative of the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Affairs to the European Union.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is the honor of our office, the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office, to host this event this morning in Lisbon, a very lovely city, and I love it. My only complaint is that it's getting hot today. And Hans, I'm sorry, I really want to give up. Not give up Hong Kong, but give up my jacket. And I tell you one secret. There is a rooftop swimming pool in this hotel. And I promise you, next year, I will try my best to host a similar event, but not in this room, but in the rooftop poolside party, so that we can wear bikinis and our swimming trunks and have a very good time. When we are talking about business, it is better to do it in informal way. Then that we can build trust. Because when we are getting drunk, then we can trust each other. Okay, back to a more serious topic. Today, we are going to talk about the trade and how Hong Kong and Asia market is developing and why these two topics. I would say in recent decades before the pandemic, we talk about a lot decarbonization to tackle climate change. Less is more, and to be exact, less is the key to survival. And then came the pandemic, and everything seems to have changed. The focus is decoupling, deglobalization. It means that there will be less cooperation, less trust, and more inward looking. And now I'm bold to say that we are approaching the final stage of the pandemic, if not the end of the pandemic. I think it is the right time for us to rethink about the globalization and also whether we should go down the path of rebuilding trust, international collaboration, and also multilateralism. And Hong Kong is a founding member of the WTO, World Trade Organization. Hong Kong has been supporting multilateralism and international trade from day one. There's no tariff in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is a platform for international exchanges, trade, values, art, culture, people. In this seminar this morning, I hope the experts can share with us how maybe we can use Hong Kong as an example to show the world that more cooperation, more international trust will actually do benefits. And it is not benefits for just one side. It is a multilateral benefits. And on this note, I would like to extend my special thanks to the speakers from all corners of Europe. And also some of them from far, far away, like Mr. Stephen Phillips, all the way from Hong Kong, who is the Director General of Invest Hong Kong. Thank you very much for coming all the way from Hong Kong. It's very hard, I know, traveling, during this day. But I promise you, Stephen, next time, poolside party here in Lisbon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hedy. Very good news. And I know some of you already tried to have a coffee, but we still have the round table, global trade system, and we will have 2 speakers online, and me and Mr. Jorge Costa Oliveira will be here with you. So I would ask firstly to ask Mr. Jorge Costa Oliveira to take your seat. And Mr. Jorge Costa Oliveira is former Vice Minister for Internationalization Affairs of the Portuguese government. And then we will have here in the lab wall also Mr. Francis Ho, Acting Director General of Trade and Industry at the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. And we will also have Mr. Peng, Minister of the Mission of the People's Republic of China to the European Union. So I will now take my place and make further introduction of each of the speakers in the round table with us. Thank you very much. I have already briefly introduced you, and I would like to begin by asking Mr. Francis Ho to make his speech. But before that, I would like to explain Mr. Francis Ho is Acting Director General of Trade and Industry at the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. His responsibilities include Hong Kong's participation in international and regional economic and trade forums, negotiation of trade and investment agreements, Hong Kong's bilateral trade relations with trading partners in Europe, Asia, Japan, Korea, Oceania, and Africa, as well as Hong Kong's strategic trade control system. And so, Mr. Francis, if you're so kind, please make your speech.
Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much, Bernardo, for the kind introduction. It's indeed a great pleasure to join today's seminar organized by the Federation of Hong Kong Business Associations worldwide. I'm thrilled to note that friends that I made during my earlier tenure at the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office in Toronto, like Alex Sham and David Matheson, are holding key positions in the Federation. I always feel at home and surrounded by good friends when I attend events organized by the Federation. It is an honor for me to join this distinguished panel of speakers this morning to talk about the global trade system. I must applaud the organizers for their insight in picking this discussion topic and for selecting this auspicious day for the seminar. As many of you may be aware, the World Trade Organization will be having its twice postponed 12th Ministerial Conference in 3 days' time on the 12th of June. In fact, my team and I will be leaving for Geneva tomorrow for the Ministerial Conference. If not because of some domestic issues, I should have come to join you all in person in the beautiful city of Lisbon. As Hans mentioned, it is important for face-to-face interaction. And as Eddie should have told me earlier, that his plan is to organize a poolside event. So that would give me additional impetus to come. So my goal here this morning is to really set the scene by sharing with you, first, Hong Kong's perspective on the challenges faced by the multilateral trading system. Second, what we hope to see coming out from next week's ministerial conference. And third, how the business sector could participate in the process. As Eddie mentioned earlier, Hong Kong is a founding member of the WTO when the organization was established in 1995. Our status as a full and separate member of the WTO has not been changed because of our return to the motherland in 1997. In fact, as provided for in the Basic Law, which is our mini constitution, Hong Kong will remain as a separate custom territory and may, using the name Hong Kong China, participate in relevant international organizations and international trade agreements. Like Mr. Cheung, who represent Hong Kong's economic and trade affairs to the EU, we also have our own mission and permanent representative in Geneva for WTO affairs. All along, Hong Kong prides ourselves to be a staunch supporter of the multilateral trading system with the WTO at its core. Back in 2005, Hong Kong hosted the 6th Ministerial Conference of the WTO. We are also the first WTO member to ratify the Agreement on Trade Facilitation. We always seek to make the best commitments that we can in the WTO. Although we are a developing country member in the WTO, we have never resorted to seeking special and differential treatment provided for developing and least developed country members under the WTO. For us, as a small and externally oriented economy, the WTO provides a stable and predictable framework for the conduct of international trade, as well as protection for our businesses, especially those micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, from arbitrary and discriminatory actions by trading partners. However, despite its success in promoting trade liberalization and global economic development, as evidenced by the increase in the number of WTO members who have pledged to abide by international trade rules since its establishment by 1/3 to 164, the slashing of average applied tariff rate applied globally by almost 60%, from 6.4% in 1995 to 2.6% in 2017, as well as the doubling of global GDP per capita from $5,400 in 1995 to nearly $11,000 in 2020. The WTO is now facing unprecedented challenges brought about by the fast-changing international environment. The rise of protectionism, COVID-19 pandemic, and geopolitical tensions have all created much uncertainty and even doubts about the rules-based multilateral trading system. There are also doubts whether the decision by consensus approach in the WTO could really work, given the diverse interests and concerns of members from different stages of economic development. Furthermore, what is happening in Eastern Europe makes the negotiations even more complex and difficult. Like Eddie, we believe that trust is what we need now in the multilateral trading system. We need to demonstrate to our people, as well as businesses, that they can trust the WTO in delivering global trade rules, which are timely, relevant, and could improve people's lives as well as the sustainability of our global resources. We also need to reestablish trust amongst WTO members in the multilateral trading system itself in order to progressively drive improvements to the system as one single entity. Without trust, any institution would be like a house of cards, shaky, vulnerable, and impossible to be further built upon. In the next few days, you may probably be hearing a lot from your media and your business contacts about the discussions at the ministerial conference concerning fisheries subsidies, WTO's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, extension of the moratorium on customs duties on electronic transmissions, WTO reforms, etc. The EU and Hong Kong indeed share similar positions on many issues at the WTO front. For example, we would like to see the early conclusion of the fishery subsidies negotiations in order to end harmful subsidies endangering our marine resources. We also call upon restoration of a fully functioning dispute settlement system. Hong Kong will continue to participate actively and constructively in the negotiations with a view to helping the organization as a whole to deliver meaningful outcomes at MC12. When we look at the WTO, we should not solely draw on the outcomes of one single ministerial conference to judge its purpose and effectiveness. One should not lose sight of the initiatives undertaken by like-minded economies, the so-called plurilateral arrangements to promote free and open trade and investment, whether it is under the WTO umbrella or beyond. For instance, in December 2021, 67 WTO members, including the EU, Hong Kong, the UK, the US, and China, adopted a declaration announcing the successful conclusion of negotiations on services domestic regulations aimed at increasing transparency, predictability, and efficiency of authorization procedures for services provider hoping to do business overseas. There are also other similar plurilateral initiatives being pursued in Geneva concerning e-commerce, trade and environmental sustainability, investment facilitation for development, as well as micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Beyond the WTO, we are also seeing more like-minded economies entering into free trade agreements to deepen economic integration amongst the parties. Such FTAs can be seen as building blocks conducive and contributive to the eventual multilateral trade liberalization. For Hong Kong, we have so far signed 8 FTAs with our trading partners, namely the mainland of China, Macau, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, Australia, New Zealand, Chile, EFTA, and Georgia. Many of you in this room may be interested in how to tap into the massive mainland Chinese market through Hong Kong. Our FTA with the mainland, entitled the Closer Economic Partnership Arrangement, or CEPA in short, is a high-level and comprehensive FTA and is currently the most liberal FTA of the mainland. Under CEPA, goods exported from Hong Kong to the mainland can enjoy zero tariff, while the mainland has also opened up to Hong Kong services industry substantially. Of all 160 trade in services sector, 153 have been fully or partially opened up for Hong Kong. In addition, according to the most favored treatment provision, the MFN provision in the CEPA, any commitments made by the mainland under its other FTAs that are more preferential than those under the CEPA will also be extended to Hong Kong, thereby ensuring that Hong Kong enterprises will ensure to have better access to the mainland market under the most favorable conditions. I should add that CEPA has a nationality-neutral policy. There is no restriction on the source of capital of a company in order to be eligible for the CEPA benefits. Foreign firms, including European firms incorporated in Hong Kong, can enjoy preferential treatment under CEPA as local Hong Kong companies. Another exciting development in the Asia-Pacific region is implementation of RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. RCEP is at present the world's largest FTA, covering more than 30% of the global population and total GDP. It includes the 10 ASEAN member states, Japan, Korea, mainland China, Australia, and New Zealand. According to a report published by the Asian Development Bank in October last year, RCEP could increase the global trade revenue by $263 billion and the global export by $496 billion by 2030. All 15 members economies of RCEP are indeed major trading partners of Hong Kong, accounting for over 70% of Hong Kong's total merchandise trade in 2021, and about 50% of Hong Kong's total trade in services and total investments in 2020. In addition, except for Japan and Korea, Hong Kong has signed various bilateral FTAs with 13 of the 15 member economies of RCEP. Hong Kong has already indicated our interest in joining RCEP, and we are glad of the positive response from RCEP members that we have received thus far. We look forward to joining RCEP following its accession arrangements for new members. Ladies and gentlemen, the business community has been an important resource guiding Hong Kong's work in the pursuit of new trade agreements and our participation in multilateral and regional cooperation initiatives. I would encourage our business representatives to continue to get involved. After all, the purpose of these arrangements are for promoting and protecting the interests of our people and our businesses. With these, I would like to thank the organizers once again for the invitation. And I look forward to hearing the remarks from our fellow panelists and the exchange under the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Francis Ho. I would now like to introduce Mr. Peng, Minister of the Mission of the People's Republic of China to the European Union. He graduated from Beijing Foreign Studies University in July '89 and got his master's degree for business administration from the Capital University of Economics and Business of China in June 2000. Since joining the Ministry of Commerce in 1989, Mr. Peng successively served as official, deputy director, deputy director general, and director general of the Department of Asian Affairs of the Ministry. Besides, he also served as economic and commercial counselor of the Chinese embassy in the Kingdom of Cambodia, in the Republic of India, and in the Chinese Consulate General in Sydney. Mr. Peng, as I said before, serves now as Minister of the Chinese Mission to the European Union from April 2021 until now. Mr. Peng, please.
Thank you, Bernardo. Also, thank you so much for your kind invitation from the host. I'm very much honored to take this opportunity to exchange views with you on the global trading system and China-EU economic and trade cooperation. As my colleague Francis Ho mentioned just now, the 3 decades since the end of the Cold War marks a golden age of free trade and economic globalization. The capital, goods, services, and various kinds of resources flow more and more quickly around the world, making the global industrial chain and the supply chain increasingly interconnected. The countries in the world were deeply integrated and gradually formed a big global family of economy. So thanks to these changes, social productivity was advanced by leaps and bounds, and huge benefits were created to all mankind. According to the IMF, the world economy has quadrupled over the past 3 decades because of globalization. According to the World Bank, global incomes has increased by 24% since 1990, boosted by free trade. The income of the poorest 40% of the world's population rose by 50%, and more than 1 billion people have been lifted out of extreme poverty. These facts fully show that economic globalization and free trade are the cornerstones for the development and prosperity of contemporary human society. We should be committed to these principles for a long time ahead. Now the global situation is undergoing dramatic changes. Both the pandemic and the Ukraine crisis have been deeply affecting the world, and the globalization has run into headwinds. However, just as Chinese President Xi Jinping pointed out that economic globalization remains as the trend of the times. Though countercurrents are sure to exist in a way, none could stop the river from flowing to the sea. Driving forces bolster the river's momentum, and resistance may yet enhance its flow. Despite the countercurrents and the dangerous shows along the way, economic globalization has never and will not change course. As two major civilizations and markets of the world, China and the EU have always been staunch practitioners of free trade. China-EU economic and trade cooperation has also maintained a strong momentum. In 2020, despite a sharp drop in global trade due to the pandemic, China-EU trade volume increased by 4.9%, and China became the EU's largest trading partner for the first time. In 2021, our bilateral trade reached $828.1 billion, increased by a big jump of 27.5% year on year. And China remained the top trading partner of the EU. In the first 4 months of this year, our bilateral trade amounted to $256.9 billion, up by 6.8% year on year. In the meantime, two-way investment between China and the EU has also remained stable, reaching $212 billion in 2021. More importantly, our bilateral cooperation is expanding in scope, and opportunities continue to emerge in such areas as climate change, green development, digital transformation, infrastructure, and connectivity. China and the EU are also staunch defenders of free trade. China and the EU have set up a joint working group on WTO reform and promote WTO evolution and rejuvenation. When the WTO appellate body became paralyzed due to the obstruction of one particular country, China and the EU, together with other 17 WTO members, set up a multi-party interim appeal arbitration arrangement, it's short for MPIA, which demonstrates the confidence and support of all parties in multilateral trade and effectively safeguards the multilateral trading system with the WTO at its core. On April 1st, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang co-chaired with President of the European Council, Charles Michel, and the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, the 23rd China-EU Summit. The two sides expressed the willingness to maintain regular strategic communication to tackle the global challenges and protect world peace and prosperity. Besides, both sides agreed to hold 5 high-level dialogues, including on strategy and economy, after the summit. Meeting with the two EU presidents, Chinese President Xi Jinping emphasized that China and the EU should act as two major forces upholding world peace, and offsets uncertainties in the international landscape with the stability of China-EU relations. Also recently, President Xi had phone calls with the German Chancellor, Mr. Scholz, French President, Mr. Macron, and heads of other EU countries, sending a strong message to the outside world that China and the EU will continue to strengthen cooperation and safeguard world peace and stability. The positive signals sent by the high-level official exchanges between China and the EU have provided strong guidance for the development of China-EU relations, laid a political foundation for deepening bilateral cooperation, and instilled stronger faith in the business communities of the two sides. Looking ahead, as long as China and the EU can work together, there is still much to be achieved in the bilateral cooperation. The Chinese vision to the EU will continue to play a bridging role in supporting China-EU business cooperation. We are ready to listen to the opinions and suggestions from the business community. Dear colleagues, dear friends, Hong Kong will soon celebrate the 25th anniversary of its return to its motherland, China. Over the past 25 years, Hong Kong has forged ahead on a broad path of common development with the mainland, maintaining its own characteristics and advantages. Hong Kong's romance of blending the East and the West and its charm of a dynamic city are apparent more than ever. Nowadays, the word Nilongkong is accepted as an acronym of the top 3 financial hubs in the world, meaning New York, London, and Hong Kong. Hong Kong is also one of the most liberalized economies with great competency. According to the 2021 annual report on economic freedom of the world, released by Canada's Fraser Institute, Hong Kong has again topped the list as the world's most liberalized economy for the 2nd consecutive year. The prosperity and the stability of Hong Kong is rooted in one country, two systems policy, under which Hong Kong people administer Hong Kong with a high degree of autonomy. Patriots governing Hong Kong is the core essence. Not long ago, the election of the 6th chief executive of Hong Kong Special Administrative Region was successfully concluded. Mr. John Lee won the election with a high vote, which once again reflects the strong vitality of one country, two systems, and fully reflects the wide support and expectations of all sectors of society. The prosperity and stability of Hong Kong relies on the firm support of the Chinese central government. The central government clearly stated in the 14th five-year plan to support Hong Kong in enhancing its status as 2 major hubs of global offshore renminbi business and international aviation, and to establish and consolidate the 8 central functions, including finance, trade, and shipping. This reflects the important position and mission entrusted to Hong Kong by the central government, and also provides guidance for the future development of Hong Kong. The prosperity and stability of Hong Kong also benefits from the unique geographical advantage of being backed by the motherland and open to the world. As the second largest economy in the world, the fundamentals of the mainland China's economy, its strong resilience, enormous potential, vast room for manual and long-term sustainability, remain unchanged. As a bridgehead of economic and trade exchanges between the mainland and the world, based on its advantages of deep internationalization and specialization, Hong Kong can make the most of international public products and cooperation platforms such as the Belt and Road, play a unique role in the grand development plan of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area, and comprehensively serve the country's reform, opening up, and dual cycle strategy. In a word, Hong Kong will make greater contributions in upholding all-round cooperation between China and the world. Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, at the opening ceremony of the Boao Forum for Asia Annual Conference 2022, President Xi Jinping once again promised that no matter how the world will change, China's determination and commitment to reform and opening up will not waver. China will firmly follow the path of peaceful development and always be a builder of world peace, a contributor to global development, and a defender of the international order. China is ready to work with the EU and other countries in the world to uphold true multilateralism, firmly safeguard the international system with the United Nations at its core, the global order based on the international law, and the multilateral trading system based on WTO rules. We must work jointly to overcome all kinds of challenges on the way forward and usher in a brighter and a better future for mankind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I will now introduce Mr. Jorge Costa Oliveira. He is former Vice Minister for Internationalization Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Portuguese Republic. And among the Vice Minister's portfolio were the fields of foreign trade and investment. And it's very interesting also to mention this appointment, which also explains why Mr. Jorge Costa Oliveira writes regularly in the local Portuguese newspapers regarding Asian themes. He was actually Commissioner for Legal Affairs of the Macau Gaming Commission from 2002 to 2010, and he was Director of the International Law Office of the Government of Macau from June 21 to 2010, and the Legislative Affairs Office of the Government of Macau from 89 to 2001. Mr. Jorge, please make your introduction first.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I really think that there's not much to add to the very comprehensive speeches that have been made by the high-ranking officer from Hong Kong and the Minister of the People's Republic of China mission to Brussels. I strongly believe that Hong Kong has a bright future ahead of it in the coming years. And the fact that the Greater Bay Area provides even more business opportunities is only going to facilitate that. Hong Kong is a good model of the potential that the one country, two systems model can bring to the development of a special administrative region of China. I'm one of those that, although it's never good to try to read in the long term, at the end of the day, because probably we'll all be dead. But I'm one of the strong believers that most likely this model will continue to go on, because it is a model that not only benefits Hong Kong and Macau, but it is ultimately a very good model for China and for creating another door or another window to the world, and it has been working in very good terms. I believe that today, in spite of sometimes when we look at Hong Kong, we tend to see that part of the, I mean, I arrived to China in 1989, and at that time, probably the China trading that went in and out of Hong Kong or via Hong Kong was probably 75% of overall China external trade. That has changed, obviously. The same in terms of shipping. I mean, Hong Kong still has very good business, but the Chinese economy grew in such a way that obviously there are now new hubs and new poles of development inside the mainland, and that has been good for everybody. In terms of financial center, although Shanghai and Shenzhen, and in the very near future, Beijing, have grown as financial centers, there I believe that there is a substantial difference in the sense that Hong Kong is and will continue to be the paramount center for foreign companies to operate and to do to provide financial services and to invest in China. And more, to a large extent nowadays, also thanks to the position of the United States government by blacklisting so many Chinese companies, more and more the center for Chinese companies to get listed in Hong Kong, and therefore this role will be only enhanced, in my opinion, with the purpose as set forth in the outline development plan of the Greater Bay Area, of creating, I mean, it's not said like this, but of having the ambition to create one of the, if not the most relevant financial center in the world in the medium and long term. And to do that, the pool of talent that exists in Hong Kong is absolutely necessary. And that pool of talent, if it spreads beyond and integrates beyond beyond Hong Kong, the Hong Kong SAR borders, and encompasses the other areas of the Greater Bay Area, has huge potential. And this is not going to be an easy task, because I mean, those of us that know Hong Kong well and Macau well, we know that one of the main interesting features that Hong Kong has is that it has probably, I'm not sure about the number, but I would say, let's say 200,000 analysts, legal professionals, and providers of services in the financial sector, many of which come from abroad. And most of these professionals, for some reason, they really want to be based in Hong Kong, and they never set foot and they never extended their activity even to Shenzhen, which to me is a mystery, but it is the way it is. And now with the Greater Bay Area, I believe that the potential of developing niche markets or specialized secondary securities markets in other parts of the Delta will allow this to be done probably in a smoother manner, but always bearing in mind that the relevance of Hong Kong as a financial center is paramount and is crucial. And one of the things that, in spite of whatever reading we have of the last years of Hong Kong, one of the things that seems to be very clear is that the central government of China has this also very clear in their mind. And this is a good thing in terms of setting up the future. Hong Kong has also a tremendous pool of talent in terms of management and in terms of so many areas. And I know this well because I worked in Macau for the government and as a consultant for more than 20 years, and I continue to have connections there in Hong Kong and in China itself. But when seen from Macau's eyes, I mean, one can only be envious because the difference in terms of pool of talent is huge. And obviously this is the corollary of the way in which each of the SARs was moved and historically was created and was developed. And but the fact is that Hong Kong has a huge pool of talent, and that pool of talent, for instance, in terms of management, has been used in many sectors. And the mainland has already benefited in many sectors. If you look, for instance, to hotel management, many of the new hotels of new chains that have opened in the mainland and they continue to open, many of them, they are serviced by professionals that are recruited in Hong Kong. And this happens in a number of areas. And to this extent, I believe that this pool of talent and this wealth of human qualifications is something that is going to continue to exist in Hong Kong. On the other hand, because even with the with larger income in urban China, Hong Kong is still a place that attracts a significant pool of talent of the most qualified professionals from the Chinese mainland. And this only reinforces the role of Hong Kong as a place where it is possible to find a tremendous pool of talent and very qualified professionals, many of which were graduated there. They did their masters there, but many didn't. They just went there because they had greater business opportunities, and with that they created the possibility of Hong Kong becoming a fantastic center. Now we are on the threshold of great change. I mean, not only from the obvious reasons of the pandemics and the war in Ukraine, but and the decoupling and the new bipolarization of the world. But when you look at China, the greatest opportunity, in my opinion, lies in the new way of organizing the large urban areas, the megalopolis. We don't have a specific expression in English like there is in Chinese, but let's call it the megalopolis areas, of which the Greater Bay Area was the first one to have an outline development plan approved after probably 7 years of negotiation between the two governments of the SARs, the Guangdong provincial government, and all the 7 urban areas, the governments of the 7 urban areas that are involved. And then we still have the Yangtze River Delta, plus the area of the Hebei province with Beijing and Tianjin. I mean, these 3 areas alone, each of them has an economic scale that is very appealing, and that will force companies from outside, and in this case, I'm thinking about European companies, to reshape and readdress the issue of how they want to target the Chinese market. Because from now on, it does not make sense, in my opinion, to try to look at the overall market. It makes sense to look into each of these megalopolis areas, because they're going to be more and more integrated, and to find distribution mechanisms and mechanisms of setting up foot and doing business, whether finding partnerships, exporting, or trying to find capital partners to ventures outside in third geographies. This is something that European companies are now looking into, and that brings tremendous potential, especially for companies of European countries that are small companies, as is the case of Portugal. For the German companies, this is probably, for the German large company and conglomerates, this is probably irrelevant. But I mean, Mercedes will sell, irrespective of whether they sell in the Greater Bay Area or in China. I'm pretty sure that they have agents already covering most of the country. But for countries like Portugal, countries like the small countries, all the European small countries, one of the problems that our companies have is that they don't have scale to target the overall Chinese market. Even when they go into online platforms, it is difficult to do that, because online platforms, and I'm thinking here especially of Taobao and Tmall from the Alibaba Group and JD.com, they provide a fantastic logistics service at the national scale in China. But the reality is that if you don't have a scale for the Chinese market, that is probably not going to help you too much. Now, the fact that now you have megalopolis which are large, which are reach, which is the country, for instance, which is the case, for instance, of the Greater Bay Area. This provides tremendous opportunities for companies from small countries, and I believe that this is an area where we should look into. Another area where we should look into is the area regarding new financial products, where Hong Kong wants to be on the lead. I mean, in the same way that when we talk nowadays about green bonds and green financial products, or blue bonds and blue financial products, and new financial products linked to ESG or to sustainable development, we in Europe, we have London and Luxembourg competing for that, and very soon other financial centers trying to compete for that. And Hong Kong is also now wishing to enter into that area. And in my opinion, this is an area where it will be possible to have tremendous opportunities in terms of placing these kind of new products in the new financial centers that are being created, from Macau for Portuguese-speaking countries, and hopefully a bit beyond that, or even Dongguan, and tomorrow in one or two more areas that create securities markets, for instance, for specific technological niches. The third area that I think has huge potential in terms of the Greater Bay Area is the fact that the Guangdong province, insofar as it is my knowledge, is probably, in terms of the provincial governments, is probably the richest government of China. Many years ago, when I helped the liberalization of the Macau casino gaming industry, that led to a significant growth in the Macau Reserve Fund. It was in 2019, I believe, equivalent to $26 billion US. And to my surprise, when the negotiations were taking place for the Greater Bay Area, I realized that probably the Guangdong government has much larger reserves than Macau. So, and many of the companies from Guangdong, I'm especially thinking about the SOEs at the provincial level, usually we don't think about them. Those that made the newspapers and the media are the central level SOEs. But if you will only think about the SOEs from the province of Guangdong, the potential to do partnerships, the potential to go abroad with them for third geographies, and the potential to have them invest in this case in Europe is huge, and it is something that the Greater Bay Area is going to facilitate, and is something that we from Europe, we from European companies, and we from European think tanks and research institutes should look into and try to facilitate, as is the case today. And I want to compliment the Portugal-Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce for this initiative, as we should facilitate and create awareness for this, because the potential is great in any of these fields. And I believe that I have spoken already a lot. I apologize because I think it is far more interesting if we exchange views. Thank you very much for your kind attention, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, George. It's a really interesting contribution. Thank you for that. And as we want to follow the schedule, so at 10:30 we will do our coffee break, but I still would like to make a question to each of the speakers. And so I will start immediately. And actually, Mr. Francis, I will divide this question in two. The healthy development of the global trade system is currently being affected by the recent geopolitical turmoil. What are your views on the role of the World Trade Organization promoting multilateralism? And the second part is, how can Hong Kong in particular contribute to promote the global trade system?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to briefly respond to Jorge's comment that indeed, Hong Kong can be the platform for micro, small, medium-sized enterprises when they, from European side, they want to team up with those SMEs from our part in order to tap into the mainland Chinese market. Because as many of you in the room may already know, more than 92% of our enterprises in Hong Kong are indeed SMEs. And by SMEs, our definition are really liberal, less than 50 for services industry, less than 100 for manufacturing companies. So it's really, really small. And Like others, our government also provide a lot of support schemes for our SMEs when they want to explore our markets in the mainland, as well as in particular those that we have free trade agreements with. So back to the question, I think that is a very important question, that how we can help the WTO. We now note, as many speakers have mentioned, great difficulties that are now being faced by the WTO. But in fact, the organization, the WTO, and indeed its predecessor, the GATT, has been tested and challenged many times since their establishments. The recent geopolitical turmoil is only, we think, one of the many challenges that the WTO has to go through. The rise of protectionism, the pandemic, and other unilateral actions by the WTO members have posed, of course, challenges to the WTO and have created uncertainties about the role of the WTO in promoting the global trade system. But history will tell that the WTO has been capable and will be capable of withstanding these challenges. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, only with trust amongst each other that members can engage actively, collaborate constructively, and work pragmatically can we promote global trade. From Hong Kong's perspective, I can tell we will continue to do as much as we can in promoting free and open trade. We impose no tariffs on imported goods, but because of our free regime, I think that is conducive to our trading status. To quote a WTO report released recently, Hong Kong was ranked the 8th largest trading entity in the world. We hope this will demonstrate that through free trade, open trade, they will really help trade to prosper. So joining forces, we will continue to collaborate with interested economies in order to forge high quality free trade initiatives and trade pacts, as well as to push forward initiatives at the WTO conference. Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you. And I've prepared here 2 questions for Minister Peng. I think I'm going to go immediately to my second question, and then we'll see if we have time to go to the first. So I think the audience will be more interested in this. And the question is, according to some media reports, the large-scale blockade measures in Beijing and Shanghai have caused huge economic losses for China and have also had a huge impact on the global supply chain system. Can China's economy withstand the pressure brought about by the current strict COVID-19 prevention policy? And when will China's supply chain system return to normal?
Thank you, Bernardo. I think this is a very good question, and thanks for the concerns from the business society on the pandemic situation in China. As we all understand, China's policy on pandemic prevention and control is based on the principle of putting life first and gives top priority to the health and safety of the people. China's dynamic zero COVID policy does not indicate absolute zero infection, but aims to realize the most effective containment as soon as possible. Our practices have proven that this policy suits China's conditions with lowest costs, least fatalities, and minimum impacts to the economic development and social life. In terms of the death toll, China is one of the lowest fatalities in the world. In terms of economic development, in 2020, the world's major economies were in deep recession, but China's economy achieved a positive growth rate of 2.3%. In 2021, China's economy remained strong with a year-on-year growth of 8.1%. And also on the basis of last year's high growth, the Chinese economy increased by 4.8% in the first quarter of this year. So these figures fully show that China is one of the most successful countries in the world in the pandemic prevention. Of course, as we all understand, any prevention and control measures against the pandemic do have certain costs. But compared with protecting people's lives and health, these temporary costs are worthy to pay. We will take scientific and precise pandemic prevention measures according to the global conditions, continue to build a safety barrier for people's lives and health, and coordinating various undertakings for economic and social development. As all of us, you can see, at present, Beijing, Shanghai, and other areas in China affected by ongoing Omicron variants are rapidly returning to normal. Enterprises are resuming work and production, people's life comes back to normal, and the national economic system and supply chain system are re-accelerating in operation. In the meantime, the State Council of China has issued a package of policies covering 6 aspects and 33 measures to firmly stabilize the economy in response to a series of new risks and challenges. With these policies, we could protect people's life and health to greatest extent and minimize the impact of the pandemic on economic and social development at the same time. We have full confidence and means to restore the relevant industrial chain and supply chain system to normal and develop as quickly as possible, so as to ensure that China's economy is stable and sound in the long run. So China is willing to work with the EU and all the other parts of the world to further develop bilateral economic and multilateral economic and trade cooperation and make greater contribution to the stabilization and the recovery of the global economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Jorge, under the theme of a new era, stability, prosperity, opportunity, and the unique one country, two systems mantra, one gets curious regarding Hong Kong's future. But what else besides the free flow of capitals, the low and simple tax system, the business openness, and the proximity to China mainland can Hong Kong do to promote more business, more multilateralism?
No, I'm not really sure if I'm the most qualified person that has been speaking today to speak about that. I would say that the most important thing about Hong Kong is that it works well. It's a great example of one country, two systems, and it has served China tremendously, and it has served international trade in fantastic terms. So the most important thing for me as regards Hong Kong is not really, to be fair, not really to try to find new ways and new avenues of business, but rather to keep the model running as efficiently as possible. And I believe that that's what successive governments of Hong Kong have done in very effective terms. It is very unlikely, in my opinion, that, I mean, there have been rumors about Hainan and other areas, but it is very unlikely that new areas are created in China that enjoy the same level of autonomy and that are free ports, free cities, and with free flow of capital as Hong Kong and Macau enjoy. And to that extent, I would say that what one needs to do is to adapt the framework that exists to new needs. And I think that has been done. And I think that is going to be catalyzed in terms of opportunities by the outline development plan of the Greater Bay Area. I really believe that Hong Kong, as long as continues to be a successful business city that serves the interests of China, that has the potential to increase trade, that is a place where foreign companies feel more at ease to have their bases and to make the flow in and flow out of capital in China, will continue beyond the period that has been stipulated as an SAR, and I'm not alone. Even a couple of days ago, there was a high-ranking member of a think tank from China that stated that. And of course, we're talking about futurology, but in my opinion, this role is very important, that is maximized and that it continues to work. And to that end, I think that what now remains to be seen is how the business sector and the financial sector, how they adapt to the reality of the opportunities of the Greater Bay Area, and how Hong Kong reacts to that. I already mentioned that, in my opinion, the pool of talent that Hong Kong has, and that has been increased by the appealing effect of bringing in more and more qualified professionals, will continue to allow Hong Kong to have a leading role in terms of the Greater Bay Area. And to be fair, I believe that is going to continue. That is going to continue for decades. And if we all know how to place ourselves as consultants, as companies, we will all have the opportunity of benefiting from that. And I think this is an ongoing process. Obviously, nobody really knows how the Greater Bay Area implementation plan is going to work, but I believe that it has tremendous potential. And frankly speaking, Hong Kong and Shenzhen are the key cities for the implementation of the potential of the Greater Bay Area.
Thank you, George. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Hong Kong has proved over and over an amazing capacity to adjust. It's very surprising and it's very good. And we can see by the effort of the authorities currently that they are adjusting quickly, so timely. So it's great. So since we still have a couple of minutes, I will go back to my first question that I had prepared to Minister Peng. You have mentioned in your speech that China and the European Union are both practitioners and defenders of global free trade. At present, there are many discussions on free trade around the world, including some criticisms. And with this in mind, what should China and the European Union do to maintain a fair and open global free trade system?
Thank you, Bernardo. So I think, firstly, China and EU should continue to firmly safeguard the multilateral trading system with the WTO at its core. As an important pillar of the global economic governance system, WTO members have covered 98% of the world's trade volume, which fully demonstrates the representativeness of the WTO's multilateral trading system and its attractiveness to members. The WTO system is not perfect, but without it, the world will return to the era of economic jungle in which each country operates in an isolated manner and beggar thy neighbor. We should make concerted efforts to promote WTO reform and jointly improve the multilateral trading system with the WTO at its core, rather than abandon it. As important WTO members, China and the EU should boost the confidence of all parties in multilateral trade system by promoting the success of MC12. Just like Francis mentioned earlier, Judging from the current situation, all parties should seize the time window before the meeting to achieve more consensus on issues such as fishery subsidies, intellectual property rights exemption, and WTO reform. Our both sides should also make good use of the China-EU WTO reform joint working group and other multilateral and bilateral cooperation mechanisms and platforms to jointly coordinate and promote WTO reform process. By doing so, we would commit to solving key and urgent issues that threaten the survival of the WTO, increasing the relevance of the WTO in global economic governance, and striving to improve the efficiency of WTO operation. And secondly, China and the EU should resolutely resist all forms of trade protectionism and deglobalization. As two of the most important economies and major trading countries in the world, what China and the EU advocate, oppose, and cooperate with are of global significance. As long as China and the EU can unite and cooperate to defend the global free trade system, the tendency of protectionism can be effectively curbed and the process of economic globalization cannot be reversed. As I mentioned in my presentation earlier, China and the EU have always been staunch practitioners of free trade and are also beneficiaries as well. Maintaining an open free trade system is not only the responsibility of China and the EU to the world, but also serves the common interests of all parties. I have noticed that in recent years, the EU has successively released a series of policy toolbox, such as the foreign investment screening, 5G toolbox, international procurement instrument, short for IPI, and anti-foreign subsidy legislation. These measures have aroused concerns of many business people. According to a survey by the China Chamber of Commerce to the EU, in 2021, Chinese companies' overall rating of the EU's business environment declined for the second consecutive year. At present, the international situation is undergoing dramatic changes. The pandemic and Ukraine crisis have caused a huge impact on the world, making energy shortages, food crisis, inflation risks, and supply chain ruptures all at hand. As a result, economic globalization has encountered unprecedented difficulties and challenges. At this critical moment, China and the EU should pursue the true concept of openness and independence, resist trade protectionism and anti-globalization ideology, and jointly make the right choice between cooperation and decoupling. This is not only the common aspiration of the business circles of both sides, but also profoundly affects the future of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. With this, we will pass to the coffee break. I would like to thank Mr. Francis O, Minister Peng, Jorge Costa Oliveira. Muito obrigado pela presença também. And we will now pass immediately to the coffee break. Thank you. Everyone, please take your seats. We will start the seminar again. We will continue. Thank you very much. Again, very, very collaborative. We have a very good crowd this morning. So I will now introduce Mr. Silas Cheung, who will make his speech. Mr. Silas is Regional Director for Europe, Central Asia and Israel at Hong Kong Trade and Development Council, Frankfurt office. Mr. Silas, please.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Hola, bom dia. I'm most delighted to be here today, not because this is my very first business trip to Portugal after taking office since last year, but also seeing the overwhelming turnout today, reflecting your immense interest about Hong Kong. With the 25th anniversary of the establishment of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region around the corner, today is a timely occasion to give a closer look at Hong Kong's latest economic development and to understand what business opportunities it may present to you. We have a panel of distinguished speakers today who will surely be touching on the many advantages that Hong Kong has to offer. So allow me to speak from a slightly different but a more personal perspective. The year of 1997 has a special bearing for me, and it was also the year that I joined the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, the statutory trade promotion organization of Hong Kong. The job put me at the forefront of witnessing Hong Kong's evolving role as a business platform and how we have been reinventing ourselves over time. Indeed, Hong Kong has grown from an entrepôt in the old days into an international center for finance, commerce and trade, a home for corporate headquarters, as well as a major hub of investment, transportation, and logistics today. Working at the Hong Kong Trade Development Council for the past 25 years have also allowed me to walk hand in hand with the Hong Kong business community in good times and unavoidably bad times too. Hong Kong has been facing many internal and external challenges over the years, including the Asian financial crisis, SARS, and most recently, the COVID-19 pandemic. However, resilience and perseverance are in Hong Kong DNA, and we have successfully served each challenging wave, becoming stronger each time in the process. In year 2021, Hong Kong recorded an overall GDP growth of 6.4%, driven partly by the very strong exports of goods, which increased by 19.9% in real terms. Over my career, I'm pleased to have witnessed an increase in global companies leveraging the many benefits of Hong Kong to successfully build their success in the region. Today, we have a record number of more than 9,000 overseas and mainland companies with offices in Hong Kong. Over 43% of them are either regional headquarters or regional offices, reflecting the very strong fundamentals of our city. I am very much encouraged by what I have seen and witnessed in the past 2.5 decades, and I remain very positive and optimistic about the business values that Hong Kong can create and deliver. The world is clouded by uncertainties from growing geopolitical tensions, ongoing supply chain disruptions, to challenges brought by the climate change and also record high inflations. I believe there is much that Hong Kong has to offer to Portuguese companies as you look for the much needed business opportunities beyond the pandemic. The search for markets with potential for recovery is heavily tipped in Asia's favor, since it houses growth drivers such as the mainland China and ASEAN bloc. Such opportunities place the Hong Kong strength as an international hub in Asia, as well as the city's well-defined role in the mainland development plans, such as the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area, which features a market of 86 million people with a GDP of 1.7 trillion US dollars, a market bigger than the economy of Italy. Let me share a few practical examples on how our companies can work together. Number one, an export-led recovery will be important for Portugal, and Hong Kong represent enormous opportunity for the country to increase exports through utilizing Hong Kong's unique strength at the gateway to the mainland and the Asian countries. According to the World Trade Organization, Hong Kong is the world's sixth largest exporter. In fact, with Portugal being one of the world's largest wine exporters and with food export representing around 12% of your export, Hong Kong is an ideal export market for Portuguese food and drink companies, for example. We are the #1 wine auction center in the world, and we are also the regional wine trading and distribution hub in Asia. Hong Kong also is the key food and drink export market for other economies in the region. For example, as the former country head of the Hong Kong TDC in Japan, I'm very proud to tell you that Hong Kong has been the #1 export market for Japanese food in the last 15 years. The Japanese Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries even signed an MOU with the Hong Kong TDC to make use of our international trade fairs to grow their exports. Number two, Portuguese firms have not been immune to the ongoing supply chain disruptions impacting the global economy. Considering trade partners in Asia supply around 13% of Portugal imports, Portugal can further lean on Hong Kong's strength as one of the most leading sourcing center, which offers excellent logistic support to alleviate supply chain issues and to diversify your sourcing. Indeed, Hong Kong is an ideal location for where companies can source efficiently from the Chinese mainland and the Asian nations. Among the top 10 business container ports in the world, 3 of them are located in the Greater Bay Area, including Hong Kong, of course. The Hong Kong International Airport is also the world business airport for international cargo. Number 3, Hong Kong should be high on the list for Portuguese firms looking to raise funds and investment. I'm given to understand China is one of Portugal's largest sources of FDI, and you may wish to know Hong Kong is the preferred conduit from which mainland enterprises invest abroad, with around 60% of Chinese outbound investment flowing through our city. And overall speaking, in terms of FDI outflows, Hong Kong ranked number 4 globally. As Portuguese companies seeking to diversify its FDI scene, it should look to further leverage on the Hong Kong platform. Number 4, in recent years, Hong Kong have made remarkable development in the areas of innovation and technology with a thriving startup ecosystem of more than 3,700 startups. The city is also embracing opportunities arising from the global sustainability drive, leveraging on traditional strength as a global financial hub to grow a green financing ecosystem and as an IP marketplace to facilitate commercialization. On the other hand, Portugal has already come a very long way to advance the low carbon transition of your economy and is inspiringly leading Europe in terms of renewable energy, among other green technologies and solutions. As Portugal looks to further develop its green industry, it should look to Hong Kong to help fund these goals and to commercialize and monetize your technology. And imagine also the huge business opportunities if we can work together to match the needs of China and the rest of Asia in their pursuit of green transformation. While I have painted a very rosy picture of Hong Kong going forward, but for those Portuguese SMEs which have no idea on how and where to start, the answer is very simple. The Hong Kong TDC, along other members of the Hong Kong family present today, are here to help you to turn your vision into action. At the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, it is our mission to promote Hong Kong as a two-way global investment and business hub With an international network of 50 offices, including 13 of them, which I oversee, the Hong Kong Trade Development Council organizes international exhibitions, conferences, and business missions to connect companies from all around the world together and facilitate deals and business collaborations. Every year before the COVID, more than 40,000 European companies have been flying to Hong Kong to take advantage of our services and our event platform to explore global business opportunities. A hybrid model of our events is now available to enable virtual participation since the pandemic. And if you are not one of ours, if you are not using our services yet, I would encourage you to reach out to us. My colleague here, Manning, and also Kia are also here today from the Paris office. Last but not least, with the travel restrictions in Hong Kong easing gradually, I sincerely look forward to welcoming you to visit our vibrant city once again very soon. And thank you again for joining us today, and I wish you all a very fruitful morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Silas. It was a very comprehensive presentation. I would like now to call to the stage Mr. Stephen Phillips. Stephen, you can come here. You'll do it from here. Thank you.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It really is a great pleasure to be joining you here today to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Hong Kong SAR. I think we've had some very rich discussions, particularly in the first session this morning, around some of the big drivers of what's shaping the economy in Hong Kong, in China, and more broadly in Asia. And I'm going to build upon some of those themes in the next few minutes. Just firstly, to briefly set the scene as to Invest Hong Kong, we're a department of the Hong Kong SAR government, and our job is to help international companies and mainland companies to set up and grow in and via Hong Kong. And we work with entrepreneurs, SMEs, and multinationals, but the vast majority of our clients are SMEs. Hong Kong is a really easy place to set up and then to grow your business. So that's the key message I'd like to leave you with. It isn't only for the biggest companies in the world. At Invest Hong Kong, we support companies of all sectors of the economy, and Hong Kong's economy is mature and sophisticated. We have teams in 6 locations across Europe, 31, soon to be 33 around the world. And we specialize in helping those companies go through the process of planning, setting up, launching, and then growing a business in Hong Kong. In doing that, we collaborate very closely with the Hong Kong Trade Development Council that does fantastic work, particularly on the export side, which very often then leads into that investment step. And our teams also sit within the economic and trade offices, and we heard from Eddie earlier on. And before I get on to the meat of my presentation, which is about Hong Kong, your route to growth, I'm going to be talking quite big picture. And I want to give a sense of the breadth and scale of what's going on. But what I want to be very clear about is for each of your businesses, we will help you with very bespoke information relevant to you. We go deep, we go very granular. So today is just the big picture landscape that I'm painting. Hans, when he spoke at the beginning of this morning's session, mentioned some of the challenges. And they're real. Hong Kong has been through a challenging period, social unrest and then COVID. But maybe I could just share some personal observations. Firstly, working and living in Hong Kong, I've been on the ground through the social unrest and through the COVID period. What I see reported in the Western media, what I see and hear being said in political circles, in all honesty, it doesn't resonate with the reality that I see. So I think take things with a pinch of salt. If you're serious about the region, do your homework, because the reality is not quite what is being portrayed. On the COVID front, we know as the Hong Kong SAR government, the challenges that businesses are facing. We know that existing investors in particular have got special challenges. For new investors, it's not such an imminent issue. I want to assure you that at the top of the government, the concerns and challenges are well known. Invest Hong Kong reports every 2 weeks the sentiment that we hear from the market to the chief executive and the senior leadership team in Hong Kong. But if you're facing practical issues and you need some help, do feel free to get in touch with me directly or any of our teams around the world. We will try to help if you're hitting barriers at the moment when the restrictions are a bit of friction in doing business. All of that said, I just also want to tell you, and this is again a little bit that goes against the media narrative, the Western media would like to think that there's an exodus of companies. Invest Hong Kong supported 333 companies set up in Hong Kong last year. So the FT loves to report 5 are leaving, but they don't like to report the other side of the story, that companies, even with the restrictions, continue to come, set up, bring talent into Hong Kong and grow. As for the future, I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. But what I would say is, from the benefit of the companies with whom we're working, whether they're new to Hong Kong or whether they're existing investors, now is a really good time to be investing time and effort to work out your plans for the future. So now I'd like to share what I think are the really exciting opportunities. So again, I'm going to be picking up on quite a few themes that we've already touched on this morning. So Hong Kong is not just about Hong Kong. Hong Kong itself, a relatively small city in the context of China, 7.4 million people, just across the Pearl River Delta from Macau, which you're all very familiar with. But the market in Hong Kong, whether it's consumers or businesses, is one of the most sophisticated in the world. Think New York, think London. It's that type of level of sophistication in terms of the marketplace. And there are opportunities across the economy there, and we can help you with those. But so many of the businesses that we work with use Hong Kong for a much bigger landscape. We've heard quite a bit about Greater Bay already this morning, and I'm going to go even more into detail on that in a moment, so I won't dwell on it now. Mr. Oliveira talked actually about some of the major economic clusters in the rest of China. Those are really, really important. In Hong Kong, we talk a lot about the Greater Bay Area because Hong Kong is part of it. But what is going on in the Yangtze River Delta, JJJ, which is in and around Beijing, Chengdu, Chongqing, these are really exciting economic clusters. And the infrastructure that's being laid across the country is opening up more and more opportunities. And again, you can tap into some of those if you wish from Hong Kong. Hong Kong also can be a launchpad to ASEAN, those fast growing economies of Southeast Asia. Some of them are much closer to Hong Kong than to Singapore, obviously itself a member of ASEAN. And then finally, Belt and Road. I think Mr. Oliveira called it third country collaboration, but it is a significant opportunity, particularly for businesses in financial and professional services, and in civil engineering, contracting, and so forth. And then we heard a little bit in the first session as well about RCEP, which is this new free trade arrangement within Asia Pacific. This, I think, is very significant. It is changing the shape of trade and investment flows. We're beginning to see it in our day-to-day work. So the traditional east-west flows are now being balanced out much more on a north-south axis. from North Asia through GBA into ASEAN, down into Australia and New Zealand, and in reverse. And Hong Kong sits right at the very center of this. And this is relevant to businesses where you're looking, particularly service sectors, where you're looking to pick up opportunities in that cross-border flow of trade and investment. So the big picture, I think, is very exciting. Once COVID is out of the way, and it will be, I think we'll see very strong growth re-emerging in Asia. Hong Kong itself, I think you're probably quite familiar with its fundamental strengths. First of all, actually, that we're slap bang in the middle of Asia, the very heart of Asia. Very important for a business because it's so easy to hop around the region in normal times. In terms of what makes the business environment so user-friendly is very strong rule of law and independent judiciary based on common law legal system. We've heard about free flow of people, goods, capital and services, a low and simple tax regime. Corporations tax starts at 8.25%, maximum 16.5%, personal income tax maximum 15%. We've got robust financial system, one of the world's top international financial centers, so you can raise money, debt, equity at every stage. The infrastructure in Hong Kong, for those of you who haven't been, we've got a fantastic subway underground network, very extensive public transport, and critically, our digital infrastructure is very strong too. I'd just like to say a few words about talent. Again, Mr. Oliveira mentioned it. Talent is becoming one of the key success factors for cities, countries, and businesses around the world. And we know that in Hong Kong. And actually at Invest Hong Kong, we now have a remit alongside our FDI work, foreign direct investment work, to also attract high quality talent from around the world to help our investors grow. They've got the right people to help their businesses grow at pace. And that's one of the reasons that Hong Kong is such an international and cosmopolitan city. And it really is a lovely environment. We may all have the images of the concrete jungle, lots of skyscrapers, but we've got some great beaches, maybe not as good as yours, but also beautiful country parks. But the key message, I think, if you take something away from this slide, is actually it's really easy to do business in Hong Kong. Silas mentioned some of the figures from two surveys that Invest Hong Kong does. Both our survey on international mainland companies and our survey on startups had record high number of companies last year. I repeat that, record high number of companies last year. That isn't quite what the Western media is reporting. I think the data probably is rather more accurate than the reporting, if I could be bold enough to say that. The major sources of investment are those shown. I'd mentioned Singapore, our fifth largest source of investment. Very often companies are weighing up Hong Kong or Singapore, which order. But I would suggest that Singapore, as a country that is much the same size as Hong Kong as a city, being our fifth largest source of investment, says something very important about the role that Hong Kong plays to businesses in Asia. So that the simplistic Hong Kong versus Singapore question, I think, is just that, too simplistic, because those Singaporean companies wouldn't be in Hong Kong unless there was something very special about Hong Kong. The last thing I'd like to say on this slide is we're beginning to see a shift in the economic mix in Hong Kong. We all know strong in financial services, strong in professional services, logistics, trade. But if we look at the startup community, it is driven, not surprisingly, by technology. Fintech is big, innovation across a range of technology areas, AI, robotics, and crucially, life sciences. Life sciences, I think, is one area where there's great potential between Hong Kong and Europe. And that's from medical devices, pharma, through biotech. Moving on to the sort of bigger geographic opportunities, I put here some of the highlights from the 14th five-year plan. This is relevant because this is the first time that Hong Kong and Macau have basically had their own dedicated chapter in the 14th five-year plan. So this is the China 14th five-year plan. And it sets out very specifically Hong Kong's role. I won't go through it in detail, but I think this again goes to the point of the utility of Hong Kong for the country. And these questions as to whether Hong Kong still has a role to play really are not the questions in Beijing. There's absolute clarity that Hong Kong has a crucial role to play in these areas. The Greater Bay Area, Silas talked about some of the figures, more than 10 times the size of the population of Hong Kong, 86 million. Highest GDP per capita, so great consumer opportunity. Also home to some of the country's most innovative businesses. GBA today is the 11th largest economy in the world in its own right. I would suggest that makes it a little bit too hard to ignore unless you ignore it consciously. And if we look forward to 2030, it's quite likely that this region of the world will be the 5th or 6th largest economy in its own right. And it is a heart of innovation combined with financial services, which really will see this region emerge as a real engine of both technological growth fueled by capital. It's very, very exciting indeed. A lot of it is helped by connectivity. I won't go into it, but the Pearl River Delta used to make the region quite difficult to navigate. We've now got bridges across the river and we've got high-speed rail links in place. Hong Kong to Shenzhen, 15 minutes, Hong Kong to Guangzhou Nan, 48 minutes. So this makes it easy to move around. And goods before took 4 or 5 hours from one side to the other side. Now over the bridge from Hong Kong to Macau and Zhuhai, maybe 40 minutes. So it's transformed the logistics picture. Each of the cities, there's 11 of them in GBA, have got their own comparative advantages. I'm not going to go through the details and we'll share the deck here as well. But the key thing, I think, from a business point of view is to think very smartly, what is the right city, or probably what are the right cities for you to be looking at? And I'll come back to that question in a moment. I'd like to talk now, though, specifically about Hong Kong's role in the Greater Bay Area. There's the B2C opportunity, those 86 million increasingly wealthy consumers. And they're demanding financial services, consumer products, healthcare, insurance, a whole range of different services. And increasingly, you can serve them from Hong Kong rather than having to have a presence in one of the cities across the mainland. So this north-south flow within GBA, very important. Secondly, on the business-to-business side, as I said, lots of innovative mainland enterprises, both state-owned and privately owned, call GBA home. And working with them, selling to them, partnering with them is a phenomenal opportunity. And that really, again, relates to a point that I think Mr. Oliveira touched on again, is that the outbound investment from those state-owned enterprises at a provincial level and those provincial level privately owned companies, the ability to serve them as they go outbound to the rest of the world in Hong Kong and then partner with them wherever else you're doing business is a phenomenal opportunity. And the final point here, which is related to this north-south trade and investment flow, is GBA and ASEAN, I think, will be much faster growing as a channel of trade and investment than probably anywhere else in the world. So I would suggest you just observe this, watch this very closely, and figure out how your business fits into it, into the future. Our job to Invest Hong Kong ultimately is to help you make things happen. This is all the big picture context, but what we really do is get down into the details with you and help you figure out a plan and help you execute that plan. And that includes, hiring people, finding the right premises, setting up business, bank accounts, and so forth. In terms of the Greater Bay Area, it's complex. We set up a dedicated team to help companies navigate it. It has the advantages of one country, three systems, actually, because you've got the two systems of Macau and Hong Kong. But that's the magic sauce, actually. Leveraging the best of all three of them is the way forward. We're also doing some pioneering work of collaboration with the rest of the country. So at Invest Hong Kong's instigation, we set up a pan-GBA inward investment group. So it's ourselves plus our counterparts in the other 10 cities where we're working to make GBA easy for businesses like yourselves, to give you a one-stop shop, if you like, where there's a single solution. You don't have to shop around, but we can tell you maybe do ABC in Hong Kong and XYZ, maybe it's in Zhongshan. Again, very bespoke to what your business is doing. If you want to know more about GBA, we just the week before last issued a practical guidebook on setting up in the GBA. This goes into details in terms of the opportunities in the sectors mentioned, so innovation and technology, financial services, business and professional services, lifestyle industries, aviation. And also lots of case studies on winning strategies, government policies and facilitation measures. But back to the point really about making it happen. At Invest Hong Kong, our job is to help businesses like yourselves to use Hong Kong to find growth opportunities for your business. We know it's complex setting up outside your home country, but we can help you at every step of the way. And we also know that it doesn't happen necessarily very quickly. So whether you want to have a conversation today, next week, next month, next year, or in a couple of years' time, we will be there to support you all of the way. Feel free to get in touch with me. My LinkedIn QR code is there. And Paula Kantz. Paula, do you want to stand up just to show that Paula's here from our team in Brussels? She's obviously frequently here in Portugal and would be very happy to have a chat at any time. But hopefully I've given you a flavour of the just massive breadth and scale of the opportunity, and that actually it's much, 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 much better than perhaps you're led to believe by the media. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I would like now to call Mr. Oscar Moderator, Vice President of HKSAR. Please take yours. You will be moderating the next panel. The next, then I would like to call Mr. Xu Haifeng, Chairman of the China Chamber of Commerce and Industry to the European Union, and Chairman of Bank of China, Europe. I would like to call Mr. Chris Davies, Deputy CEO at HSBC Continental Europe. And I would like to call Mr. Marius Rossell, CEO of Trilogy, a company specialized on e-commerce platforms. And Oscar will be leading and moderating this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernardo. Welcome. Good morning again, everyone. So we're going for the second session, second panel of this morning. We have distinguished guests, another set of distinguished guests. Allow me to start and to repeat the presentation. So we have Mr. Marius Rossell on my right, is the CEO of Triology, a e-commerce company. Mr. Rossell will give us some updates on that before and some details. We have then, following to my right, Mr. Chris Davis is the Deputy CEO of HSBC Europe. Welcome again. And lastly, but not least, we have Mr. Xu Haifeng. Mr. Xu is with us in his quality of chairman of Chamber of Commerce and Industry of European Union. But Mr. Xu is also, although he's not here in that circumstance, but Mr. Xu is also the chairman of Bank of China Europe. Our roundtable is about business opportunities in Hong Kong and Asia markets. So until now, we've seen a very clear picture on Hong Kong's political and financial profile. We've also touched the concept of the Greater Bay Area, which is something that for us Westerns is not as in our day-to-day life as it is in that part of the world. We all seen the potentialities of that region. I mean, we live in Europe. We're from mostly from small countries, especially Portugal. A total population of 86 million, 1.9 trillion GDP per year, and 56 square kilometers is something of impact, at least for us, from our point of view. We can see the potentialities to Portuguese and mostly for European countries on that side of the world. I will pass the floor to my guests, starting by Mr. Marius Rossell. We have a presentation, right, Marius? Yes. So I will help our support on that. So please, if you put on Mr. Rossell's presentations. Thank you, Mario. The floor is yours. Thanks. Yes, please.
Hello. I will be brief. I think I have a short time. Actually, I'm dreaming on that swimming pool. So in 2008, I was in one of the missions that organized for the Spanish government to China in order to explore new business opportunities. And I had the chance to meet so many businessmen there, entrepreneurs, and they all told me actually the same, that China is a very difficult market, that you can get that piece of the cake that everybody or all the companies are looking for, but the market is very tough, it's very difficult. And I said, well, why not? I mean, I have tried already my business, it was quite successful, so why not explore China? European markets, I guess that you are more or less aware that in the end, Europe is also very difficult because we have different cultures, different languages, and in the end, although people say that it is a unique market, in the end we find out that, well, each market is very different from each other. So I said, well, so let's go to China, one country, big population, the e-commerce was booming, and on 2009, at the end of 2009-10, then, well, I packed my stuff and I went to China. I set up my company first in Hong Kong. And after 6 months, I moved to China. I set up the company there. It took me 6 months more to set up the company there. And well, I was all set, ready to go. The numbers there on that moment on the e-commerce, that he was saying that, yeah, I'm running an e-commerce consulting firm. The numbers on the e-commerce was booming. I think that we are all aware of the numbers that we are always talking about. But let's look at the numbers that we have nowadays on the retail e-commerce in China. This data that you are seeing here is already corrected because the data that it was forecasted in 2019 was slightly different, but well, due to COVID, things have changed. These numbers actually are 10% less. Yeah, everybody's saying that the numbers are always growing. And in fact, yes, the e-commerce is growing in Europe because Europe is one step back compared to China. When I went to China, the e-commerce was 2 steps back compared to Europe, but now China is perhaps 2 steps ahead of Europe or the West. So these numbers are slightly corrected, but one important data that actually is not here that I would like to mention is that the e-commerce, the cross-border e-commerce has climbed 15% year on year in 2021. This is very relevant, and this is very relevant for SMEs that they are, well, try to go to explore new markets, not only Hong Kong or the great area that in the previous panelists show us, which is, I think, is also very interesting, but also to China. Well, everybody's talking always about how successful are the companies that goes to China. But let's look at the companies that failed or actually changed their strategy. I guess that, well, more or less, you know, pretty much all of them, but why they failed. I think there is one main reason why foreign brands fails in China, and which is that they don't understand the market. In Spanish, there is, when I lived in China for 9 years, and there is one name, one actually verb that we have in Spanish that we say achinarse. Yeah, I don't know if you get the meaning, but actually it's like get Chinese. Yeah, you need to get involved into the Chinese culture. You need to know and understand the market, the population, their habits are very, very different from our habits. The behavior, the buyer behavior is completely different from us. So I think this is one of the most important things to understand when we go to China. We need to understand the Chinese market. Also, some of these brands, they arrive there thinking that, well, I will do the same as I did in the West. I will go there, I will open a lot of big brick and mortar shops, I will expand my business there, but in the end, well, the result is here. Some of them, they have redefined their strategy. Yeah, and actually they closed all the brick and mortar stores and they moved all the business to online. Example, Gap, for example. Yeah, no. What I was mentioning before, the get Chinese, achinarse. Yeah, I think there are a lot of new opportunities also still for SMEs and also big brands, but big brands mostly they have already tried the Chinese market, but basically SMEs. What are Chinese customers eager to find in the new brands? Basically, well, I have described here the quality, authenticity, performance, prestige, etc. But Chinese customers are eager always to find new brands. They want to be exclusive. They want to be different from their friends. So they are always looking for new brands. So this is a majority, a vast important thing for the European brands that wants to go to China. Let me give you a couple of examples. We have a couple of customers that they didn't know, but they were selling a lot in Taobao. Yeah. The marketplaces and channels that we have in China is huge, is enormous, a lot more than the West. But they suddenly knew or found that there were many Chinese buying in their shops, not only, let's say, here in the country origin, but also in online. And they didn't understand why. Well, if you make a little research, you will find out if you are here, some retailers, if you go to Taobao and try to type your brand name there, most likely you will find your products, not all, but some of the products. And how come? Yeah, well, there is a phenomenon here of a few years ago called Daigous. Basically are Chinese or living abroad or before COVID, they're actually traveling to Europe. They're buying these brands and they're selling into Taobao. Yeah, Taobao, I would say that kind of the C2C platform. But this is perhaps the first proof that your brand can be succeed in China. Well, let's see other companies that have succeeded in the last years. Yeah, Carmina is a good example as well. I was mentioning before, they found out that their products were in Taobao, and we helped them to enter little by little, not, I mean, going and China and started opening brick and mortar stores everywhere and setting up operations there, but little by little through cross-border. We honestly think that nowadays, one of the best ways to enter in China is through cross-border, and Hong Kong perhaps is one of the best ways to do. You can operate completely from your origin country or even from Hong Kong, or a dual, entering products through cross-border. Martiderm, it's a very successful brand in China. In 2018, on the Singles Day, in the 11/11, they sold $8 million in products in Tmall. Yeah. And the reason why they sold suddenly 8 million dollars in one day, it was because they had like bottles, yeah, these medical bottles that you break from the top, yeah, and then you can put it in your skin or in your hair or whatever, yeah. So this was unique in China. None of the cosmetic brands thought to bring these products there. Actually, Martiderm is always selling these products in these bottles. So they were so successful thanks to these bottles. So you never know when or how your brand can be successful. Yeah. So this is one of the examples. So let's try to find that masterpiece for you in the market. Honestly, here you see only a few. If you research on internet, you will find this kind of big pies, yeah, with tons and tons of logos through different sources and channels. But, well, obviously here we are highlighting the most important ones. We are always talking about Tmall, JD, these are the two main marketplaces. Taobao is the C2C that also belongs to Alibaba. But there are a couple that are kind of growing a lot, which is, well, here from the under, it's called Red or Xiaohongshu, which is kind of not a marketplace, but is a social network channel where people can drive the traffic and sell directly in this channel, or Pinduoduo, which is targeting very well the elders and is very successful and is growing very fast. So yeah, how we can enter in China, how we can enter into Hong Kong or the Great Area, which basically we have two. I point out here a few things that I think are very important, but I strongly suggest to go step by step. Yeah, otherwise you can go and spend a lot of money in the market. Imagine that the marketing that you are doing here in your local market, how much money you spend in marketing. It's a lot. So in China, you can multiply this by 20, 30, 40, 50. It's like, it's like a bag that you can put money with no limit. Yeah. So we need to target very well which is the customer, which are the cities. There are some cities that are better for you than others, not always tier ones like Shanghai, Beijing, or Guangzhou, but also tier 2 or tier 3 cities could be very interesting for your brand to enter in China. So honestly, consider cross-border, and you can set up your operations, for example, in Hong Kong or in your country origin on operations and so on. Two main trends that are happening: live streaming or live commerce. Started in China, is coming here. So if you are running some e-commerce websites nowadays here in Europe, so I strongly suggest to think and see closely what's going on in there. This guy is called Austin Lee, and he had the record of sales in the Singles Day, and the conversion rate of the live streaming is around 15%, which is a lot. It's something that is never seen. And I strongly suggest to go this way because the results are very high. And then the metaverse. Metaverse, it's kind of new for us, but the e-commerce will be metaverse or will not be. As radical as this, but think that metaverse is the closest thing that we have to the physical. Yeah, and we don't need to think about us. We are too old for the metaverse. We need to think of the new generations. Yeah, the Gen Z, Generation Z is very keen to try these things, and if all the big brands are investing in metaverse, is because they are thinking in the Gen Z, not on us. Especially, for example, Taobao, Alibaba will launch their metaverse in the 618, which is one of the shopping festivals that it comes soon. And the other groups are also, and also especially here in Facebook is also investing in this. Well, just a few clues on the things that needs to think for entering into the Chinese market. I'm actually kind of proud to have survived for 13 years in the Chinese market, but even more proud to help customers to enter into this market. So basically, I don't think that you see here, but what it says is that be patient. Yeah, this is the clue of the market. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Marius. Thank you. Well, from e-commerce to probably one of the oldest business or activities of mankind, banking. Mr. Chris Davis. Chris, I mean, you come from this background from HSBC. I mean, one of the biggest banks in the world, based in Hong Kong, with all this background and skills. How is the bank looking for instance, for Greater Bay Area, the opportunities, and how is the bank accommodating to this new region and this new concept, which is slightly new in that part of the world?
Okay, thanks very much. I guess, first of all, thanks for the welcome, and it is indeed great to be here together. And I think the richness of all these discussions has thrown up lots of new ideas for me. So I think, you know, the benefits of being together are there. Yeah, look, I mean, I think two things. Yeah, I don't want to fall off the back of the stage, that's for sure. So first of all, going back to be patient. In one dimension, we've been operating in these markets a very long time, probably longer than the vast majority of Western companies. So since 1865, when we were founded in the same year in Hong Kong and in Shanghai. So I think we have been patient. There have been all sorts of fluctuations in geopolitics over time, and that's obviously a preoccupation for many of us now. But we've seen a few during that time period, be it the First World War, the Second World War, other really big issues. But, you know, fundamentally, nonetheless, the exchange between China and the rest of the world has endured, and we've ended up, you know, continuing to be a big part of that. So that's really what we have been about, what we continue to be about. In more recent years, we've been able to re-establish our presence on the mainland since the 1980s, with reopening, with the support of the Chinese government, and that's helped us, I think, support clients all over the world, including many here in Europe, in that huge rebound of economic activity in China during that period. So it's been, in that sense, a very long-term story, but there is a thread of continuity there, which is good. And some of the key things that have helped us have really been those long-term relationships and that patience, without a doubt. And we've always invested a great deal of effort and respect with the authorities, in particular in China. And of course, being a fundamental part of the Hong Kong landscape as we are there as well. And I would say that's probably been the key success factor: staying power, respect for relationships, and dealing with the changes that can come about. I guess more recently, we were able, actually, this is building on something that Francis of Hong Kong mentioned earlier on, the CEPA agreement between Hong Kong in particular and China to do accelerated growth into what was, into Guangdong province, but which has become a key building block of the country's Greater Bay strategy. And indeed, I currently am based in Paris, leading our European network, but the other half of that, the other end of the trade flow, is China. And I was based in HSBC China in Shanghai during those years when we were able to start the accelerated investment into Guangdong. Now, why would we do that? First of all, I think there was a regulatory window of opportunity to do that. Banking remains a regulated activity, as in most places in China. And that was a window of opportunity that opened to accelerate our growth, and we took that. So that was another thing perhaps to watch out for. But otherwise, if we look at that continuity between Hong Kong, where we have very huge scale, and the mainland, it's clear that this strategy has the potential, as many of the commentators have said, to completely transform the landscape in southern China, and indeed possibly China's connections with the rest of the world, building on the window that has already existed with Hong Kong. So we started out by building up our scale across different businesses there, whether that's retail, commercial banking, investment banking, but always with an eye on the interchange and the exchange of goods and services with Hong Kong itself, and then also between that region and the rest of the world. And what we're seeing is incredible levels of development. People have talked about the GDP forecasts and the demographics of that region, probably 100 million people by 2030. And GDP, even from its very large current level, due to possibly more than double within that time frame as well. And the nature of the activity is completely different. Not long ago, that's always been that coastline, a hub for more traditional industries. But if you visit somewhere like Shenzhen or Dongguan, as previously mentioned, the scale of the tech investment in particular is unbelievable. Of course, separate from that, the infrastructure has come together, as Stephen had mentioned, to facilitate these flows. But it's literally transformed, and we ourselves see that through inbound client activity into those sectors, in particular technology, healthcare, services, and then of course the consumer market, which has been mentioned here. But in addition, we tap that economic potential, that talent pool ourselves as well. In Guangdong, we have 22,000 employees of HSBC. The minority of those are actually operating in the bank, but we have 20,000 employees across operation centers, and actually including in that 9,000 IT developers as well, who are all drawn from the local population. So this is moving on from a scene, let's say, 20, 30 years ago, when the predominant activity would be, let's say, the garment business and things of that nature. And a lot of that has been completely repurposed. So I think there are some of the sector drivers. The infrastructure is being built. For us, seeing Hong Kong, very much as our global hub with reach into ASEAN and also historic reach into China, there's a big chance, I think, to breathe a whole new layer of life into the Hong Kong economy as well, in the ways that people have mentioned. A whole new raft of opportunities for inbound investment from, for example, from here also. And I think the chance for China to develop a much richer window on the world, which, in our mind will be very good for the global economy in the next decades.
Thank you so much. I'll get back to you again. Mr. Xu, and in your perspective as also as a banker, but mostly as a leader of a Chamber of Commerce, being a local, a Chinese, but based in Europe now, what do you recommend as someone from that part of the world? What are your for you, what are mostly the business opportunities you identify as a local, but also someone with a Western exposure and experience?
Thank you, Oscar. I'm very honored to have the chance to take part in this seminar. Just like to mention that it's quite important that we can deliver what's our ideas to see how the development of China, Hong Kong, especially in the Greater Bay Area, that how we promote for the local business communities can really go to this area, and how Chinese enterprises now in European market to interact with local companies and then bring them to the Greater Bay Area, to Hong Kong. And on the other side, how to also invite our companies in Hong Kong and in Greater Bay Area go to this market. So I think it's kind of vice versa, and to go to work together on these issues. I may elaborate some of the points. I want to focus on business opportunities in Hong Kong and in Greater Bay Area, and on a broader economic and relations between European companies and the region in China. And we think that area around the Pearl River Delta has been indicated by many as one of China's most vibrant and important regions. Some consider it as emerging Silicon Valley of Asia. So the Greater Bay Area has a rich ecosystem of startups and incubators in a number of fields of technology and innovation. Especially, it presents a high concentration of Fortune Global 500 companies, like in the Greater Bay Area, more than around 25 Global 500 company headquarters is set up in their area. And for the Guangdong province, as example, more than 60,000 technology companies there. So, and along with, we are very happy to count various CCCU members like ZTE, Huawei, BYD, BDI Group, China Southern Power Grid, etc. So these companies, based in that area, also invest in Europe, and they play a very important role in this market. I think it is also quite important. And also this region has a diverse economic outlook with a massive high-tech industry development rooms. Among the emerging industries, we can count the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, hydrogen technologies, new mobility, clean tech, healthcare. The Greater Bay Area also offers a dynamic market for financial services, like our HSBC and other financial institutions, state-of-art infrastructures, and optimal business environment, which are the fundamental elements for companies to develop their business and to thrive there. So I think the importance of Hong Kong, in the supply chain, financial services, and global trade made Hong Kong, play a primary role and economic of the Pearl River Delta and the surrounding area. I think it's also for three main reasons. Firstly, I think that Hong Kong is a main partner for stable, sustainable, and resilient of a supply chain. And the city's geostrategic location and logistical infrastructure already make it suitable region base for some of the world's biggest logistic firms. And it's a gateway to China and Asia it functions as a bridge between European and Chinese companies for development. And secondly, we think Hong Kong is a global financial center with a central position in international flows. Hong Kong has been traditionally important financial hub in Asia due to the role of a trade platform between domestic and foreign companies. In the 2019, the Outline of Development Plan is foresee a deeper integration of financial industry in Guangdong province, Pearl River Delta, Hong Kong, and Macau into economic integrated world-class business hub. Thirdly, Hong Kong will always remain a key trade hub in Asia for global trade. Over the years, Hong Kong has become an international trade hub for trade from and with China. According to the reports from WTO, in 2020, Hong Kong was the 6th position for export and 8th position for import worldwide. At the same time, the EU is Hong Kong's second major trade partner after China mainland. And the EU is Hong Kong's third export destination for goods after China and the United States. And it is the second destination for exporting services with a total trade goods of 30 billion euro in 2021, with a total trade of service 27 billion euros. Likewise, EU has been a major source of foreign direct investment in Hong Kong. According to latest survey carried out by Hong Kong government in 2018, over 2,200 EU companies have set up their business in Hong Kong, and around half of them are use Hong Kong as their regional headquarters or regional offices. So lastly, the signing of a regional comprehensive economic partnership, the RCEP, brings a new growth momentum to Hong Kong. Hong Kong has signed high quality free trade agreement with 13 economies in the RCEP and is trading intensively with them. In 2020, Hong Kong traded with 15 RCEP member economies exceed 770 billion US dollars, accounting for 73 of Hong Kong's total trade. And in fact, the consideration I made so far are not only linked to the advantage of the Greater Bay Area for investors, but also for the fact that consideration between Chinese and European companies is the most important. As the chairman of CCC EU, I have witnessed the strong interest of European and Chinese enterprises to join hands in good cooperation in both China and the EU. This is also one of the purpose of the CCC EU to a bridge builder for Chinese enterprises in Europe and to increase dialogue and mutual understanding between Chinese and European enterprises. We strongly believe that there are great opportunities for European companies to develop their business in the region. At the same time, we also encourage companies from Greater Bay Area and Hong Kong to come to European markets. In fact, with Chinese companies come to Europe, they find partner and friends in the local market, and then also invite them to China and further to develop their business. This positive cycle ultimately will produce a win-win result for all parties and foster innovation and growth both in EU and in China. So this is a win-win cooperation, in particular important for sectors in the green and the digital domain, such as telecommunication, new energy vehicle, green mobility, digital technology, artificial intelligence, new energy technology, and so on. So at the CCCU, to support and foster cooperation between European and Chinese enterprises, we produce every year a flagship report on business environment in the EU, which contain our analysis of the ease of doing business in the EU single market. According to our survey and interviews, more than 90% of Chinese companies believe that in the next 3 to 5 years, China and the EU will continue their good economic and trade cooperation. They remain confident in the long-term development of China-EU relationship. many Chinese investors regard EU as one of the most important strategic destination for investment when they go abroad. In 2020, Chinese companies had a total turnover of 150 billion euro in the 27 EU member states and provide about 320,000 jobs in the EU and play an important role to promote the relations between China and the EU. So as we discussed today, the Greater Bay Area offers a particular favorable business environment due to the condition we have highlighted before. EU-Hong Kong trade in commercial services had showed stable development in business and financial services over the past years. This fact I highlight so far are especially important for companies looking for profitable investment and trade with partners in this area. And I'm sure that they are attractive for European investors who are looking to develop their business in the China market through the gateway of the Great Bay Area Council and Hong Kong. And therefore, for the CCCU, we are ready to support and feel free to reach out to us for any matters. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Xu. I think we all had GBA, Great Bay Area masterclass during this morning. So first Cheung, then Silas, then Stephen, now Mr. Xu. I'm a lawyer, so I always go to the practical side of things. We have plenty of entrepreneurs in the room, and allow me to be as candid as this. How much one needs to spend to go operationally and online? I mean, a CME, is this, we heard that Stephen Phillips told us that that's the trend. Most of companies going to Hong Kong are SMEs, but is this financially wise, financially speaking, is this affordable for a small medium company, Portuguese company? Allow me, the foreigners, but since we have a lot of Portuguese companies in the house, allow me to give this example. Sorry, I think.
Very interesting question. Actually, not the first time that they asked me, so I kind of have the answer. For SMEs, the amount, the initial amount to spend in the first year would be 100,000 euros. That's pretty much the number that we always have in mind, including basically online. I'm talking about online, not offline. First, test the waters, running your products into one of the marketplaces or even with your website, operating from here, but basically investing all this amount in marketing. Yeah. So in a nutshell, I would say that 100,000, that's pretty much the number that we need to have.
Per year. So on a constant basis, or you see what, I mean, on a medium term, 5 years term, it would be enough, I mean, for a SME to establish, to eventually be profitable?
Yeah, well, be patient, remember? So at least we suggest to invest for 3 years. I would say at the 100,000 per year, more or less. Yeah. Also, the good point of the e-commerce is in the end, you can try and error. You invest here, doesn't work. You can invest there, doesn't work. You invest in another thing, then you try and error, test the waters, and then you can find which is the best channel or the best source for you, and identifying which is your target customer, which is the most important thing here. No, you need to woo the Chinese customer, and you can operate from here, which is a good point. Also, Portuguese brands, and I see some Spanish brands, also European. They started just marketing the Chinese market through the social networks. Yeah, you saw some probably WeChat, Weibo, Xiaohongshu are, well, now Douyin, TikTok, that is also very now very popular. And then you can deliver the stuff from here. If you talk about retail, yeah, you can send from here. You can
operate everything from here. You can have your customer service here. I mean, we all know that, I mean, in Portugal, from what I heard, but also Spain, there are so many Chinese living here. So even in our company, yeah, we have the staff in China, but we do have also our staff in Barcelona, and we have 3 Chinese people also. So it's easy to operate from here step by step, and if the things goes well, then you can make the final step, which is setting up a legal entity in China, operate in China, and import all your products in China, and then you can be fully operating there.
Well, that's good to know, because we in a Portuguese Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce and Industry, myself, Bernardo, myself, Carlos, and other members, we more or less do what our good friend Paulo Kant normally does for Hong Kong Invest. So we try to promote Portuguese company because at the end of the day, one thing that I already identify, we are relatively good, I would say, producing, but we are really bad, lousy branders, and we don't know what to do. So perhaps going online, it's a possibility of making it easier. So ladies and gentlemen, it's an option. Please consider that.
It's the option.
It's the option. Okay, it's the. I'm the old guy, so I'm the old guy. The other day, my son was asking me to buy a shotgun online that costs 200 euros, and I say, why? It's just it's a design online. Well, but it's like this. It's costs. It's a token, whatever. You know better than me. Chris. Interesting thing is that, I mean, you're from HSBC, and in my times in Asia, I learned that there was very important relationship between HSBC and Portuguese staff in Hong Kong, mostly. This is a story, I'm not sure how true this is. We are in the era of the fake news, but apparently one leader of HSBC in Hong Kong during Second World War was in a very difficult situation with the Japanese occupation, and then one of his employees, a Portuguese gentleman, helped him and the family, and this became a very fruitful relation between HSBC and Portuguese employees. And I met plenty of Portuguese background employees in HSBC in Hong Kong. You have that inheritance. You're a HSBC banker. Hong Kong and Portugal are more or less in the extremes of One Belt, One Road, right? What can, for instance, what kind of support, this part is not necessarily about HSBC, but what kind of support an European and Portuguese company can expect going to Hong Kong from banking institutions? Do you see this as a possibility? How strong we have to work on our commercial background to have access to, for instance, to financing from a Hong Kong banking institution? Do you see this as a possibility, or?
Yeah, look, I mean, thanks for the question. You know, the nature of the opportunity in that part of the world, I think, as everybody has concluded, is very large. It's probably going to get bigger, and it's sustainable. So it's how to do it, I think, as has been discussed. And I think one thing we can conclude is there's no shortage of advice that's available from various quarters, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce, whether it's Stephen's department in Hong Kong, whether it's the Hong Kong government, you know, whether it's other aspects of the Chinese government, or whether indeed through people like ourselves. You know, our core activity is cross-border linkages between countries. Here, the closest we are is Madrid. We cover Portugal from Madrid, but Arturo Machin, who's somewhere in the room, Arturo, yeah, there he's right at the back, if anyone wants to buttonhole him later on. He would be the link, and what we do there is our stock in trade is we manage through trade corridors. So Arturo is very linked in at a level of, you know, daily contact with our teams in China, in Hong Kong, you know, in Macau and everywhere else. And so I think we're able to pick up the inquiries here and absolutely make sure people get the right introduction, which, yeah, some of it's around finance, but quite frankly, as we've discussed, a lot of it's about actually navigating the local regulation and things of that nature. especially on the mainland. I mean, Hong Kong may be a bit more free flow in that respect, but you know, around the mainland, there's a national story, there's a provincial story, there's a city story, and you kind of have to understand how to navigate that. So I think having advisors who've got boots on the ground is like really, really important. And so that's what we set out to do. But you know, anybody that's interested in this, I mean, I hope that the general discussions today are pretty much, by the way, I've learned a lot. So thank you in particular for the modern insights. You know, it is a massive opportunity. It is complicated, but I think there is advice available, and we, amongst other banks, are well placed to provide it by having local contacts here who are very much tied into local on-the-ground expertise at that end of the trade corridor.
I'm sure that's very helpful. And gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, please take this opportunity as well. We have someone from HSBC that can help with this task. I just learned a few minutes ago, a little bird just told me in my ear that Hong Kong government is considering to promote Hong Kong Stock Exchange and to open a branch in Europe to consider promoting Hong Kong Stock Exchange in Europe. Inviting, let's say, European companies to get listed in Hong Kong Stock Exchange. We in Europe, unfortunately, and this is a handicap we have. At least I see this as an handicap. We are not on this. We don't. At least continental Europe is not as driven as the Anglo-Saxonic world for public listing and to get financing from stock exchange. What are your thoughts on this? What do you think of this decision or of this task, if this going to get through and if this really going to happen?
Well, I think what we can observe is that including between, setting aside Hong Kong, between the mainland and other markets, firstly Hong Kong and then, you know, some of the Western markets as well, there's been kind of a process of capital markets liberalisation going on for a number of years now, with the aim of providing more fluidity in the availability of capital. Well, of course, you know, local market profile for companies as well in the other direction. So, you know, I'd see that as another step in a general trend, which would be to provide more fluidity of capital. And I have to confess I hadn't heard about that, but you know, we'll see the way it develops. But if there is the, you know, ability to boost profile at both ends of the corridor, access funds at both ends of the corridor, I can only imagine that would be a positive thing for this trade flow.
Thank you so much. Mr. Cheung, a final question, because we are reaching our time. And despite we are in Portugal, we try to keep schedule. Let me just ask you, what do you anticipate? And we've seen the Minister Cheung from the Chinese representation in European Union mentioned that there's a lot of disruption in the system. There's a lot of problems with supply chains. We've seen some European companies shifting their operations, or at least their supply chains, to other markets due to COVID. Do you see this the situation going back to times pre-COVID, or any kind of different opportunities for Chinese and European companies from this moment onwards? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say that, you know, some supply chain changes and the shifting from country to country, it actually happened before the COVID. We see that some of our labor intensive works are already migrating out of China because of increase the weight, the labor cost, many of other things. But we have to see that the supply chain is the most complete supply chain, and the most resilient supply chain is really in China's market, in China. So for very large and comprehensive complicate its production, and companies they will still need to select China market as important of a supplier of the supply chain. Though currently we can see that they have some difficulty because of the COVID-19, they have the interruption of the supply chains. I think it's understandable because for a large international companies, they must evaluate the uncertainty, the risk of a continuity of their production. They have to have other means to mitigate these interruption risks. So they will also set up their other facilities in other countries. I think it's totally understandable. But if you look at the long run, that means like in the Great Bay Area or like in Hong Kong, the good logistics, the low cost transportation, and the complete set of supply chain, and will make these companies will have a sustainable operation in China's market. I think company come as goes. If we look at long run, we can still have a stable supply chain in China. But still, we see that they also have some, geopolitical issues. Now they have supply chain independence, supply chain issues, but it's from political level. But I'm sure that still China will maintain a stable and resilient supply chain to all, international enterprises.
Well, thank you so much. I think we reach our time. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a pleasure for the speakers and to share the floor with you. Let's go for the most important part of the day, which is the lunch. Thank you. Not yet. Sorry. I'm not that updated. Sorry.
Don't get too excited. Not yet. But we're getting to the best part. We are. So thank you very much. We will now move on to the next part that some may consider the best part, because it's Tim Vieira. Is a Portuguese entrepreneur. Is an advocate of entrepreneurship, of multilateralism, and of business, and not only for himself, but I see him being an advocate for everyone else and for all of us. So, Tim, please come to the stage.
Hello, testing, great. Guys, I really don't mind if we just go for lunch. It's fine. Okay, it's been a long day. I've learned so much. Everything I was going to say has been said. So thank you to all the previous people. You've done a great job, and now you leave me up here in an uncomfortable situation, just like entrepreneurs normally are in uncomfortable situations. So I'm going to just, I just want to see what kind of an audience is out there. So I've got 20 minutes. I'm going to be really quick. I just wanted you to do something. I just wanted you to do exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, you're going to stand up, turn around, just shake the hand of the person behind you, just so I can see what kind of people you are. Let's go quickly. Behind you. Yes, behind you. Yes. Okay. All right. Let's take a seat. Okay. Let's take a seat. All right. Good. So as you can see, okay, I think the Portuguese are not sitting down. Let's sit at sentence. Okay. So as you can see, sometimes we just get told things and we do them and they don't work. Okay. And as entrepreneurs, you should think for yourself, try things for yourself. The one thing I got out from Hong Kong is go there and see it for yourself, try it for yourself. And the big risk is not doing it. Okay, so I think that was just a quick lesson there. So who am I? As Bernardo said, an entrepreneur. that has failed a lot. I'm so happy you didn't say a successful one, because I always look for that one. Where's he? You know, because I've failed a lot more often than I've succeeded. I'm someone who, my family went to South Africa as refugees. I was born a year later, produced while they were coming over as refugees. So, you know, makes you think a little bit, yeah. Okay. And then I was born and got into this country that at that time was going through something called apartheid. So we had sanctions and we decided, doesn't matter, we're going to make everything ourselves. We don't need the rest of the world. We became very innovative. We had nuclear power. We actually had nuclear armament, which is the only ones who got rid of it. Okay, thank goodness. We had petrol made of coal. All right, so we had lots of coal. We made petrol ourselves. We became super innovative. All right, but yet we were on the brink of disaster and collapsing because we weren't connected to the rest of the world. And I worry about it because I've seen it firsthand. And I see so many of us thinking again that, you know, let's look after ourselves. If you look after yourself, it's a short-term solution. You're not going to have success. You're not going to grow. You're not going to be successful as a country, as a company, as a person. It's really boring just watching Netflix by yourself. So guys, I think what I can say as an entrepreneur is that the world needs us. The world really needs entrepreneurs, because at the moment, I think leadership worldwide is a little lost. Okay, but us as entrepreneurs, if we just do our little things, the things we can do, relationships, make relationships, trust people, get out there, put them on the same boat as you, have these win-win relationships, which are super difficult because we keep saying someone has to win. It's actually possible that two people win and you grow and you get through the tough times, which are coming, because I've been now through, I don't know, 4 once in a lifetime crisis. You know, .com, once in a lifetime, will never happen again. Financial crisis, the banks, thank you guys, once in a lifetime. COVID, once in a lifetime. The next one coming, once in a lifetime. It's not happening once in a lifetime, it's part of life. Okay, and with them, many opportunities do come through. Yes, it gets tougher, but that's when the tough get going. And as entrepreneurs get going, we've got some Portuguese ones here, which just heard that 100,000 will get you into China. Get those checkbooks ready, guys. Because you know what? It's probably the same price to get into Porto. Okay? And the truth is, if you're a Benfiquista or a Sportingista, it's going to be tougher maybe in Porto to do business than in China. Okay? So start looking at the bright side, the positive side, because if our entrepreneurs don't do it, we're all going to really be stuck. We actually have very, very little hope. One thing I know as a person who talks to people, listens to people, we're all actually quite similar. Our Spanish friend was busy saying we need to get in there and find out, you know, the Chinese consumers, how are they, etc., etc. Of course, we have to do that. But every time I've traveled, 2019, talk about good timing, because I listened to my wife. We did a round the world trip on trains through Russia, Mongolia, Vietnam, China, etc. I was saying we should go in 2021. If they'd listened to me, we'd still be stuck here. I saw that people just want to improve their lives. People just want to give a better life to their kids. Okay. We have a lot of media that complicates a lot of things. Yes, there are difficulties. No one is perfect, not even us. All right, not even us. Okay. And yet we want others to be perfect. So I really think that step by step, in the right direction, we go far. There's more roads now. There's more planes. There's like everything. Like listening to this, I don't know why I waited to come and talk. I should be on my way to Hong Kong. And the truth really is that, guys, you know, there's so many things we've got no control, but there are things we have control. Our little businesses, our lives, the things we can try. Even if they go wrong, it'll be an experience. But if they go right, we create wealth, we create jobs, we create lives for people. And that's, our entrepreneurs. I know I'd made some like notes on my phone while I was here because everything I was going to say would be said, and then I just took it off. So, coming to the end of it, I just want to say, that if we don't do it, okay, I know that we're a bit older than the ones on the e-commerce that you were mentioning too, but if we don't start to do it, there is no example. And it's much better to have an example that executes, people that do things, people that try things, than us constantly just writing more articles, listening and making excuses. I really believe that that's going to be the wrong way. So if you're an entrepreneur here today, really think about it. It's a call to action. Try it. There's 86 million people there. There's, I had a friend, he was from New Zealand, and he told me, Tim, I don't know why the Portuguese are always talking about crises. And he said, you want a crisis? I'll explain to you New Zealand. New Zealand, we have like 6.5 million people and 80 million sheep. Okay. Most of the maps, they forget to put New Zealand on it. All right. You guys are here in the middle. Go and do business. Go and do business. Everybody loves the Portuguese. I'm sorry to say it, but we are lovable people. Okay. Wherever I go, I say I'm Portuguese, they never go, oh, no, I'm not a Portuguese. I see some of my friends that come with me and they say where they're from, and people say, oh, no. So guys, that's an advantage. Take it, use it, create success stories. We need them. We really, really need them. We're in this world where you can work from anywhere. We also heard you can, be based in Portugal and working there, and be there and working for Portugal. It's an exciting time. Last minute, a project that we busy doing now, it's like taking up my day and night all the time. It's called Brave Generation Academy in schools. And wherever I go, there is a need for us to become more positive. There is a need for us to become more relevant, for us to change things, for us to really give what is needed and not what's traditionally accepted. Okay, so if I can tell you, go out with your businesses, find those niches, find those people, do those partnerships, etc. You're going to be a lot better off next year than you are this year. And if the crisis, stagflation, inflation, whatever we're creating next comes through, if you do nothing, it's going to hit you harder than if you're trying to do something. Okay, it's just like swimming. If you stop swimming, you go down. Don't stop swimming. All right, keep going, guys. And it's not easy. I know it's not easy because I get lots of messages about everyone who struggles, etc., etc. But you've got to have hope and faith. You've got to win those little victories that just keep you going, and find those people that open doors. All right, but you can't find them if you do nothing. So that's it. I think, yeah, I'm like 2 minutes quicker than I thought. I don't know if there's a question that you want to ask. I'm open to it, but I prefer that we go for lunch. Correct, Bernardo. All right then. Thank you.
Not just yet, but we're almost ready. Well, I would like to also, we will have the closing remarks by Ambassador Zhao Ben Tang, Ambassador of China to Portugal, who shared the video with us. And if you're so kind to put the video, and after the video, then we will go for lunch, okay?
Dear Mr. President Hans Poulis, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, everyone. The Hong Kong Seminar in Europe 2022 is coming to an end. This seminar is organized by the Federation of Hong Kong Business Association Worldwide and co-hosted by the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office, the Portugal-Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the Hong Kong Trade Development Council. The theme of this event is to promote the global multilateral trading system focusing on the development opportunities brought by the stability and the prosperity of Hong Kong to Europe and the world. Against the backdrop of the joint influence of major global changes and several pandemics unseen in the century, unilateralism and protectionism are on the rise, and economic globalization is experiencing a backlash. Under this circumstance, it is of great importance to host such an event, which in turn demonstrates the strategic mindset and global vision of the event organizers. Here, on behalf of the Chinese Embassy in Portugal, I'd like to express my warm congratulations on the success of the event. We are approaching the 25th anniversary of Hong Kong's return to the motherland and the establishment of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. Looking back at the past 25 years, thanks to the support from mainland China and benefiting from a global vision, Hong Kong has overcome many difficulties and challenges, achieved social stability, and continued to develop its economy, improve social benefits, and expand international influence. It has become one of the freest economies, one of the most active trading entities, and one of the most designed foreign direct investment destinations in the world. The practice of one country, two systems in Hong Kong is a success story recognized by all. The construction of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area will further strengthen communications and cooperations between Hong Kong and mainland China. This not only brings greater opportunities, stronger driving force, and broader scope for a new round of economic growth for Hong Kong, but also makes Hong Kong a more important international cooperation platform for the joint construction of the Belt and Road Initiative. This enhances Hong Kong's role both as the world's gateway to mainland China and as a bridge between mainland China and the world, bringing new opportunity and benefits to all countries in the world. I'm very pleased to see this seminar being hosted in Portugal. Portugal, as one of the countries with the fastest economic recovery in Europe, is also one of the first European countries to establish a comprehensive strategic partnership with China. The friendly relations linked by Macau and multi-dimensional pragmatic cooperation between Portugal and China have set a great example for China-Europe cooperations. As the world's two major forces, two major markets, and two major civilizations, China and Europe account for 1/3 of the world's total economic output and 1/4 of the world's total population. A stable China-Europe relationship is the twin engine of the world's economy and the stabilizer of world peace. It is the consensus and shared responsibility of China and Europe to promote the stable and long-term development of China-EU comprehensive strategic partnership. The seminar brings together the winsome and gathers the strengths of all parties. Faced with the risk of an ongoing pandemic and global division and confrontation, the China-EU relations are experiencing many challenges and tests. At this critical moment, we should promote dialogue and cooperation between China and Europe, improve understanding, dispel doubts, and enhance trust. No matter how the international situation changes, cooperation has always been the main theme of China-EU relations. Maintaining the WTO-centered, rules-based, multilateral trading system and promoting trade and investment liberalization and facilitation not only serves the interests of China and Europe, but also safeguards the common interests of all countries in the world. Hope that sparks of thought and constructive new ideas developed during this seminar can be turned into practical actions and further deepen the China-EU relations, expand the scope of economic and trade cooperation, and enhance mutual benefits. Once again, congratulations on the success of this seminar. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.